Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back here with another My Team Career Mode Season 3 video, and it is the penultimate round of the season, the Mexican Grand Prix. But as always, click off the video now if you haven't already watched the previous video, which was the Belgian Grand Prix, as we are going to have a recap of what was our first win in Belgium, and we also managed to take the fastest lap last time out, which means that our points tally is increased to 149 points, reducing the deficit to my teammate Charles Leclerc in the championship, who now has 168 after a P2 last time out. He had better race pace but opted for the hard compound tyres in the second stint while we went for the mediums. We managed to catch up to him and take P1. He, as a result, finished in P2. P3 was Max Verstappen for the fourth time this season in his Red Bull. A strong result. He now has 120 points, 50 points in front of his teammate Checo Perez, who was fourth last time out. He started in front of Max, but dropped behind him off the start, and although he stayed with him for the Grand Prix, didn't manage to get back in front. P5 was Lewis Hamilton, a strong result. Mercedes did look stronger than Red Bull on paper, but in practice that did not come true still. Hamilton P5 extending his points tally to 46, while his teammate Valtteri Bottas failed to finish due to a mechanical failure. P7 and P6 with the McLarens. Daniel Ricciardo was P6, a fantastic result for the Honey Badger. That moved him up into the top 10 in the standings, and what a drive it was, finishing in front of his teammate Lando Norris, who slightly struggled for pace at points in the Grand Prix. He finished in front of George Russell, who recovered well from outside the top 10 to be in P8 at the flag. That was after a grid penalty. P9 was Lance Stroll, a couple of points in his AlphaTauri. He had to defend from Fernando Alonso, who was P10 for large portions of the Grand Prix. Alonso took a point, while Sainz failed to score, finishing P11 due to a costly two-stop strategy. Meanwhile, we are Constructors' Champions. What a season it has been. We've won the title with 2 races to go, and what a fantastic performances we've had from myself and Charles Leclerc. We've won every race between us. We have 317 points comfortably in front of Red Bull, who have 190. They've pretty much secured their P2. Mercedes lead the battle for P3 with 93. They're 6 points in front of Ferrari, who have 87. McLaren are further back with 76. AlphaTauri have 37. Alpine then have 9. They have 2 more points than Aston Martin, who round out those who have scored in 8. And straight into the R&D then before this weekend, and we can either gain focus or lose 750 R&D, or we can lose driver focus. And really, we need to be focusing on improving that durability department. So we are going to go to lose focus. It shouldn't make that much of a difference, and we have just managed to get in a durability department upgrade. In terms of the car, heading into the final 2 races of the season, we will not need to take any grid penalties unless there's any disasters this race weekend. So we are going to take a fresh ACE, MGUK and MGUH, because of course we still have 2 spare of them. In terms of the energy store, we are going to keep going with the one we got at the moment and have a fresh one for Jeddah, similarly so with the turbocharger. And then onto the CE, which is generally the troublesome part of the car for ourselves. Wears fairly quickly with my aggressive driving style, but we are going to take that fresh and final one for this season, for the final 2 races of the season. And now we are heading towards the Mexican Grand Prix, and we have another event. This time it's a durability department event. Not sure, looking at it, how it relates to durability. However, we either are going to lose aero morale or chassis morale. Either way, we're going to gain lovely 750 resource points. And because I'm biased towards the chassis department, and I don't know why, we are going to opt to lose 10% aero morale. And we got the turbo reliability upgrade in for this weekend, and that is helping us in the durability. We've gone from the least durable car on the grid to heading towards the top of the standings and the leaderboard in a sense of that. We are going to go for the MGUH failure analysis upgrade. If we rush that, we can get that in before the Mexican Grand Prix, which should boost us into the midfield pack with the durability standings in terms of the upgrades we managed to get in. And we are completing some more department events, and it's durability once again. We are going to get 25% off for a very small price. We're certainly going to go for that. Quite a lot off, actually, for an ultimate upgrade. So definitely a no-brainer there. Only 50k, and that could be pivotal heading towards the end of the season. But we can't go for that just yet. And we are, though, going to go for a fabrication upgrade so that we can get more upgrades going at once. Because at the moment, we have to wait until that one has come in, and unfortunately it has failed. A control electronics upgrade, which is really frustrating because that's the most worn part usually for ourselves, but we will not get that sorted for the Mexican Grand Prix. Looking at the rest of the upgrades, the MG UK, which will be the next one to go for, we won't be able to get that in for the Mexican Grand Prix, even if we rush that, so we'll just secure the ultimate electronics failure analysis upgrade for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Another department event here, marketing this time. Either gain driver acclaim for Charles or lose racecraft and lose racecraft, or do nothing. And I think we'll have to decline the offer there. We can't really afford to be losing racecraft and stuff. I'm not trying to kill him off and try and make ourselves comfortably win the championship. That's certainly not what we want to do. 2 more department activities in a sense we can add in just to make sure we can capitalise on them. The MGUH failure analysis upgrade is in, so we can have a look at the MGUK failure analysis upgrade. No point rushing that because we can comfortably get that in for Jeddah, and we're certainly looking a bit stronger in the durability department, and hopefully we'll have less of a chance of mechanical failure into the final 2 races of the season. The energy store failure analysis is in, and now another opportunity to go for an event. We either lose morale for the area department or we gain morale. 30% morale, of course, quite a lot, makes a large difference. And although we're not really needing aero morale at the moment, we're going to go with that option to be able to increase morale by 30%. And now into the Mexican GP weekend, we have got some R&D from free practice, but it's certainly looking very interesting for qualifying. We will have slick conditions to start with. Then it's going to be light rain, intermediate conditions, into heavy rain for wet conditions, back to slicks for the end of Q3. A very entertaining looking race qualifying, set to be back to the normal Mexico summer weather with the sun set to be out for that. And the home favourite, Sergio Perez, is currently losing by 3 points in our rivalry, 11 points to ourselves, 8 to him. And with those R&D points, we are going to have a look at any upgrades we can actually go for here. We've got the gearbox failure analysis, the ICE failure analysis, and similarly so for the turbo. And we are going to go for the ICE option. That should be in for Jeddah. Strangely, AlphaTauri extremely good in the durability department. In terms of the R&D graph, then we maintain our comfortable lead over the chasing pack, but that chasing pack is looking incredibly interesting heading into this weekend. Red Bull right there with Mercedes. Upgrades for Red Bull helping them to join Mercedes at the top. Then a little bit of a gap back to McLaren, and just in front of them, Ferrari. Will McLaren struggle once again slightly off the back of that group? Then the gap back to Alpine remains similarly the same. However, Aston Martin have some more upgrades. They're getting into the mix there to hopefully battle Alpine this weekend, while Williams and AlphaTauri have plenty of upgrades to get into the mix. Watch out for them as they move further away from Alfa Romeo and Haas, who haven't brought in any upgrades since the French Grand Prix. They are starting to drift further and further away. Should be a very interesting qualifying session with rain, though. Will we get any surprises? And also, watch out for AlphaTauri and Williams. Time to get into it. Welcome to Q1, and the rain is certainly not going to come for a little while here, so we will have some dry laps before the heavens start to open. And on the soft, slick tyres to begin our first lap here in Mexico into the first 3 corners. Nicely into turn 1, you've got to cut a lot of the curbs through here, so if you think I'm trying to cut too much of them, really, that wasn't enough on turn 2 and turn 3. You gain so much time by doing so, and you really have to do that to keep up with the AI. But a solid sector 1 to start with could have been a bit better, but of course only Q1. We only need a decent lap time. Hopefully for Williams and AlphaTauri, they might be able to get a driver or 2 through. Improved cars this weekend for themselves. We should be pretty comfortable, although I think we do need another lap after this. It hasn't been the cleanest. You can see they're clipping the curb on the inside in the stadium section, a very slow speed section where the AI are much quicker than me. And over the line we go. It's not the best. P5 in front of Gasly and Sainz, yes, but we are going to go again as we head down to turn 1. Ricciardo in the McLaren is coming out the pits, and he's coming right in front of us. We're forced to lift. What is he doing? What is Daniel Ricciardo doing? We're forced to abort. Then he moves out the way. What is he doing? We've returned to the pits, but P11 for ourselves. It is going to rain towards the end of the session, so thankfully no one else will be able to go quicker, and we can spare the tyres. We do not need to go out again because we are comfortable there in P11. Nonetheless, some very frustrating driving from Daniel Ricciardo. But as you can see, behind the graphic, it is raining at the end of Q1, and we are comfortably through in P11, although plenty of time for ourselves to make up heading into Q2 and Q3 compared to my teammate Charles Leclerc, who is once again at the top of the stack at 1 minute 13.676. A fantastic lap from him to take P1 here in Q1, but very close to the back of him, Max Verstappen with a strong lap in his Red Bull just behind. He's way in front of George Russell, who's in P3 in his Ferrari. Solid work from him, continuing what has been a strong debut season. He's in front of Lando Norris in the McLaren. The McLaren not meant to be that quick this weekend, so solid work to be up there in P4 here in Q1. Can he continue that into Q2 and Q3? He's then in front of Valtteri Bottas, who's in P5, the higher of the two Mercedes, extracting more pace than his teammate Lewis in Q1. Perez will be a bit disappointed with P6, but still plenty of work to turn around that deficit to his teammate with 2 more qualifying sessions left. And then Daniel Ricciardo is in P7, quite a way behind his teammate, but that's sort of the norm at the moment this season. Lewis Hamilton is then in P8 in his Mercedes, few tenths behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas, and quite a bit of work to do behind both McLarens and a Ferrari of George Russell. The 2 Alpines then follow, Alonso in P9 and Esteban Ocon in P10. Fantastic to see them so close to the pack in front. The Alpine once again looking a pacey midfield car. Ocon just behind his teammate. We are then in P11 in front of the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly. What a lap from the Frenchman to be P12 there. An improving car and the same fantastic Pierre Gasly. Carlos Sainz will be disappointed with P13, way off his teammate George Russell, and a lot of work to do to reduce that 8/10 deficit heading into the final 2 parts of quali. And then Lance Stroll is P14 in his AlphaTauri. A strong lap from him, only 2/10 behind his teammate Pierre. Stroll is then in front of the 2 Aston Martins, who both make it through once again. The rookie Matsushita through in front of his teammate Robert Schwartzman. Those two pretty much tied together in terms of their lap times, but only just through in front of Antonio Giovinazzi and Nicolas Latifi, who are knocked out in Q1. A great qualifying performance from Giovinazzi in that improving Williams and in improving Giovinazzi in qualifying. P17 for him, just missing out on Q2. Under a tenth behind the, well, just over a tenth behind the 2 Aston Martins. Then Nicolas Latifi is P18, quite a way off his teammate, a couple of tenths there, but very strong quality from him. The Alfa Romeos then follow. Yuki Tsunoda is in front of Guan Yu Zhou. Tsunoda will be happy to get a half-decent qualifying result, 4 thousandths behind Nicolas Latifi, P19 solid. He can work from there in the race. Of course, the Alfa Romeo, the second slowest car on the grid, and that shows with his teammate Guan Yu Zhou down there in P20, pretty close to the back of Yuki. Those two decently solid in Q1. They are then followed by the 2 Haasers, Schumacher in front of Mazepin. Schumacher doing well, just 2 tenths behind the Alfa Romeo of Zhou, while Mazepin is once again off the back, but not that far behind his teammate Mick Schumacher, so maybe some slight improvements for Nikita Mazepin. But into Q2 here, as I'm sure you can see, heavy rain into light rain towards the end of the session. We are not going to go out until the end of the session, no point risking the car, and then we'll go out when it's going to be much quicker in the intermediate conditions at the end of the session. And now, here we are at the end of the session, and a little bit of a slide through the final corner. Struggling for grip, because it is intermediate conditions in Mexico. I wasn't expecting this. We are once again out quite early here in Q2, and the AI just coming out for their outlaps. Meanwhile, we are on a flyer, so hopefully we don't get held up too much, but Carlos Sainz certainly not getting on with it in front of ourselves. Hopefully he'll let us through before the start of Sector 2. We don't want to lose too much time behind the Ferrari, although on a fast lap for him, he's probably going to be quicker than ourselves in these conditions. As expected, a purple Sector 1, exactly what you need when you're in intermediate conditions. Some of the other drivers did opt for the intermediates on their first lap, not the full wet. So a very interesting field, but that should all change, of course. Now it's much quicker and much drier on the track surface, and the rain starting to ease up. But as I'm sure you can see, it has not been the cleanest of laps for ourselves. We should be fairly high up the order. Despite that, P3, I'll take that. Nonetheless, all 2 seconds behind my teammate Charles Leclerc, and everyone is going to set the timings tumbling in 1 lap time, because there's certainly a lot more pace to be found in these conditions. Carlos Sainz behind ourselves, I do believe it is. He's certainly starting to try and pressure us, probably wants to come through. Hopefully we don't damage his lap time too much, but we cannot afford to slow down and let the Spaniard through. His teammate Russell, though, looking pretty comfortable up there in P2, as now we head into the start of Sector 2. Nicely hooking it up at the apex, and that should help us. And then reasonably decent, not using too much of the runoff on the exit, and this is starting to become a very strong middle sector, and we're starting to gain on our previous lap time, and now towards the end of the lap it has been a much better middle sector. But the question is this going to be enough to get us through into the final part of qualifying? We struggled to make it through out of Q2 here at Mexico before. Meanwhile, I can't believe this, Matsushita coming into the pits. Maybe he feels he can't improve, and so are all the other cars. DRS is enabled, race control must think it's time for slicks. And all the drivers have pitted, which means their first laps will count here in Q2. I cannot believe this, which means the results are decided by everyone's first lap apart from myself, as we did decide to complete our lap. And that's P2 for ourselves, 1 minute 25.345, and we make it through to the final part of qualifying. The question is, will that 1 second deficit to my teammate Charles Leclerc remain into the final part of qualifying? Of course, we will be on slicks then. Nonetheless, a very dominant performance in Q2 in treacherous conditions for the Monegasque. A 1 minute 24.367 for him. We are then in P2, making it 1-2 for the team in Q2. Meanwhile, George Russell is a very strong P3 in his Ferrari, opting for the Inters, and then is then, of course, the best of the rest. He's then just in front of Sergio Perez, a fantastic result in his Red Bull, considering he's on the wet compound tyres, only 6/10 behind the Ferrari on the intermediates. Gasly is through to Q3. What a performance in the AlphaTauri. They got it right on the pit wall, choosing the Inters, and he has put in a stunner of a lap to make it through. P5 for the Frenchman. Absolutely fantastic, just behind the sister car of Sergio Perez. So great to see Gasly through to Q3. So is Max Verstappen, who is P6. A little bit of pace to find to his teammate. Same tyres for the two, and 3/10 behind Perez. Question is, will he have the pace on the slicks? Lando Norris is then in P7. A little bit disappointing considering he was on the intermediate tyres. Gasly was also on the Inters, so he's got a bit of work to do because he is behind the slower AlphaTauri when they're on the same tyres. But of course, I'm sure he'll improve. He's then in front of the two Mercedes. They're struggling here in Q2, although they are on the wet tyres. Lewis Hamilton just in front of his teammate Valtteri Bottas. In fact, 2/10 there, so a bit of work to do for the Finn heading into the final part of quali. But the Mercedes not looking that pacey here, and they certainly struggled a bit last weekend compared to the R&D. Then Carlos Sainz is through in P10, only just through in P10, but of course on those wet tyres he couldn't really have done much more, only just behind the Mercedes, which is supposedly a faster car this weekend. Then knocked out in Q2, Lance Stroll is P11 in his AlphaTauri. Nonetheless, a great performance. He had the intermediates, but he couldn't really capitalise on Sainz going for the wet tyres in front. Nonetheless, he'll start from P11 and potentially a position to try and take some points from in the race. Daniel Ricciardo is then P12 in his McLaren. Bit disappointing, but of course he was on the wet, so understandably took quite a way behind his teammate. But a bit of a shock here in Q2. He'll have an awful lot of work to do in the race to get himself back up into the points and score well for McLaren. Then the two Alpines follow, Alonso in front of Ocon. A bit of a shame as they could have made it through to Q3, but opting for the intermediates proved costly. Alonso, though, just behind Ricciardo, both of them on the wet tyres, really showing the pace of the Alpines. Ocon struggling a bit more compared to his more experienced teammate in these tricky conditions out on track. The two Aston Martins then follow, Matsushita in front of Robert Schwartzman, the Japanese driver, only just in front of his teammate. Very close, as usual, between those two, but great to see them in Q2 once again. And into Q3, it has dried up already. Really quite believe this. I thought the conditions changed quickly at Spa, but it's even quicker, it seems, here. You've got two sets of softs for the final part of qualifying, and away we go for our first lap. Usually just a finder in Q3, and then hopefully we'll be able to go for something quite competitive on our second time round. What is a fairly fast circuit here at Mexico. 3 DRS zones and into the first sector. Really nice at turn 1 and turn 2. If we can hook it up nicely at turn 3, which we do, a little bit too much over the sausage curve there, cut them nicely without getting a track limits warning, and that is for ourselves a very strong sector 1. Into sector 2, onto the apex there, and then just missing the apex minimally there, but a very strong start, a little bit of a lock-up as you head into the double apex corner. Really fantastic corner there, really enjoy that. Towards the end of the middle sector into the final sector, it was a bit of a struggle through the S's. Nonetheless, though, this has been a very strong lap for our first lap in Q3. Heading through the final corner, they are carrying a bit more speed through there usually than we can. Nearly on the wall on the exit, and P1 here, a 1 minute 13.775. Sainz goes P2, it's then Norris, Bottas and Verstappen struggling in P5. But I simply cannot believe that here. P1 on our first lap, and we are going to push once again. Perez, though, does spoil the party, just going quicker than ourselves. We're going to try and fight back, though, with our second run here of what will hopefully be 4, potentially 3 if we struggle with timings, but a fairly quick lap round here. A 1 minute 13, our best time, and we're already going quicker. Perez, though, the home favourite with a fantastic lap, but he is topped by my teammate Charles Leclerc once again into the 1 minute 12s. A stunner of a lap for him, and he's certainly in another league in Q3. And through the SS section, gaining so much more time than we did last time. We were quite slow through there, a little bit too cautious, really pushing this lap, and already 5/10 up on what we managed in our first lap in Q3 into the stadium section. Nicely clipping the curb on the inside, same for the next corner, then centering onto the next curb, clipping the inside curve, running a little bit out wide, so then you can swing the car back into the line, about 5/10 quicker, and that's P2. Exactly what we wanted. And now, towards the end of Q3, we need to try and defend that position. Interesting then, some cars coming out onto the track. We've got a Ferrari out at the moment, an AlphaTauri, and my teammate Charles Leclerc. Hopefully Charles is going to let us come through into the long straight and into turn 1. He does exactly that, not like Daniel Ricciardo earlier in qualifying. Pierre Gasly then currently in front. Hopefully he can move out the way fairly quickly for ourselves, although huge snap of oversteer on the exit. Really frustrating. You've got to push with a lap like that, we've managed to set. That's pretty much my optimum, and we're just pretty much going to have to just probably abandon the lap. We've still got a decent chance by going somewhere potentially quicker, but then taking too much on the inside of the curb there at the double apex corner and the second apex. And ultimately, yeah, our lap time pretty much gone as we drift out a little bit and slide a little bit through the SS section. Now, towards the end of the lap, we have abandoned the lap. A bit frustrating, but when we set such a fantastic lap for myself, for my own standards, there's not much more we can do other than really push the limits. And once you do that, you're pretty much guaranteed to be going wrong most of the time. Interestingly, though, only the AlphaTauri with Pierre Gasly, my teammate Charles Leclerc, and a Ferrari. Not sure which one it is. However, I think it is George Russell out on track at the moment. So a lot of the drivers opting not to go out again. So very interesting here. And a lot of drivers are going to be fixed with their grid position, which I do believe Max Verstappen will be potentially down there in P9 or P10. So a disaster of a quali for him. He'll have to work back towards his teammate in the race. Perez set for P3, unless George Russell and Pierre Gasly can do anything about it. But our lap here, okay-ish so far, not really that quickly, and we sort of abandoned it towards the end of this one. Thankfully, though, we are somehow going to have a 5th lap here in Mexico. We only managed 3 when it was in Spa, and we are going to begin our final lap, and this is going to be our final lap in qualifying, as qualifying is complete, and George Russell goes P4. A fantastic lap in his Ferrari, puts him in front of the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. Russell could potentially be on for fighting for a podium in the Grand Prix. Of course, he took one back at Spain, a fantastic P2 there. Meanwhile, we were a little bit sloppy through the first sector. We are not managing to match our second lap, which is quite rare that our second lap is going to be the best here. But as you can see, we're forced to push pretty much everywhere on the lap, and it's just forcing some unwanted errors and trying something different, and it is not coming off here. But it will be P2 and a front row start for ourselves, pretty much exactly what we wanted heading into this race weekend, because as usual, my teammate is quicker in qualifying, and he has managed to get past the AlphaTauri. Wants to get back to the pits a little bit quicker, but hopefully we'll have the upper hand potentially in the race, or at least the ability to be able to fight with Charles, and we are going to enter the pits. No point to complete the lap. And looking at the results of Q3, we are P2 here on the front row, exactly what we needed. A 1 minute 13, 2.86, and in a decent position to try and take our 3rd win at the Mexican Grand Prix out of 3 seasons. Charles Leclerc once again in another league, a 1 minute 12, 5.25, a simply incredible lap from the Monegasque to put him in P1 in Q3. Fantastic work there. Hopefully we can battle him in the race starting from P2. Sergio Perez, the home favourite, is a strong P3. Great lap from him there, only 5/10 behind ourselves. The Red Bull driver will line up in front of a fantastic performance from George Russell in Q3, making it up there into P4 in front of both Mercedes and Max Verstappen in that Ferrari, only just behind Sergio Perez, nearly managed to take P3. Lewis Hamilton is then in P5 in his Mercedes once again, the better of the 2 Mercedes drivers here at Mexico. He'll work from there in the race and potentially look to get past George Russell. Carlos Sainz is then P6, solid work from him. just in front of Lando Norris. The Spaniard a bit behind his teammate, though, in Q3. Can't quite find the pace of George this weekend. Lando is then in P7 in his McLaren, the only McLaren in Q3, and a great performance considering it is the second weakest car, up in P7 there for the Brit. He's then followed by the second Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas. A little bit disappointing for him, a couple of tenths behind his teammate Lewis Hamilton in the final part of qualifying. Potentially some work for him to do into the race, try and make his way up the order and help Mercedes out in their battle against Ferrari for third in the championship. Gasly is then a very solid P9 in the slowest car in Q3, only just behind Bottas, who's in that Mercedes. So fantastic work from the Frenchman, as he is, of course, in front of the quicker, much quicker, sister car of Max Verstappen. A disaster here in Q3. Only went for one lap, and it was not a good one. He'll have to fight back from there in the race towards his teammate. Perez will probably be way off into the distance by that point. But now, of course, it's time to get stuck into the Mexican Grand Prix.
Welcome along to the most populous city in North America, and home now to the Mexico City Grand Prix. It's a sellout crowd as usual here at one of the shortest circuits on the Formula One calendar. So who, I wonder, will the crowd cheer on today to the top step of the podium? The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, 2.6 miles of track that allows drivers to take full advantage of their cars, reaching speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, and providing lots of opportunities for overtaking. The circuit features 17 corners, 10 to the right and the remaining 7 going to the left. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
But from the moment qualifying's over, you start to feel the adrenaline in your body build up and the buzz in your stomach as you anticipate the run down into turn 1. It's all a bit like going into battle, and the unknown situation makes you nervous. Those pre-race nerves are a good thing. The day you don't have them means that you don't care anymore. And of course, you have to make sure that all the procedures are second nature to you, so that they're not taking up too much of your capacity.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. It's the owner-driver in pole position then. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Russell, Hamilton, Carlos Sainz and Norris, Bottas, Stroll, Leclerc and Fernando Alonso, Schwartzman, Giovinazzi, Yuki Tsunoda and Ocon. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Gasly, Joe, Max Verstappen and Nobuharu Matsushita. Ricciardo, Latifi, they've taken a grid penalty. Mazepin and Mick Schumacher. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head to trackside for today's race.
Before we get our teeth stuck into some action here in Mexico, we are going to have a quick refresh of the order because there are plenty of grid penalties and plenty of different starting tyre options. Meanwhile, we have inherited P1 from our teammate Charles Leclerc, who's down there in P9, and as a result, we need to capitalise on that and take plenty of points over him here today. Perez then starts P2 in his Red Bull on the pacey softs. Question is, will he be able to keep that P2 and take a fantastic result here at his home Grand Prix, maybe even fight us for the win? George Russell is then P3 in his Ferrari. Can he get another podium for this season, in his debut season for Ferrari? He's then followed by Lewis Hamilton, also on the soft tyres, everyone in the top 7 on the softs. Hamilton will be looking to fight the Ferraris here today, pivotal for Mercedes in the constructor standings. Carlos Sainz then starts P5. He'll be looking to fend off from the charging Valtteri Bottas further back and potentially even battle Lewis Hamilton, while Lando Norris starts P6, an outnumbered McLaren in the top 10. Can he defend from the faster Bottas, who starts in P7, just behind also on the soft compound tyres? He needs to get up the order to work with his teammate and fight the Ferraris. Then, on the medium tyres, Lance Stroll starts in P8 in his AlphaTauri. He'll be looking to try and stay there and take some strong points today, although we'll struggle to defend from my teammate Charles Leclerc, who starts in P9 on the medium tyres. He's got to charge up the field, probably going for a similar strategy to ourselves. Will he go for the one-stop, though, or the two-stop? He's then followed, running outside the top 10, is Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. He's starting on the pacey soft tyres and will be a force in a very strong looking car. Robert Schwartzman then starts P11 on the mediums. Here we're looking to see if he can potentially take some points today. Also starting on the mediums is Giovinazzi in P12. Can the Williams manage to stay there for the Grand Prix? He then starts in front of the slower Alfa Romeo, also on the medium tyres. That's Yuki Tsunoda in P13. The Japanese driver could struggle with the machinery at his hands. Question is, how long can he stay there? With the quicker Esteban Ocon behind in that Alpine on the soft tyres, can he make his way up to his teammate and potentially score some points in this Grand Prix? His fellow countryman Pierre Gasly made it into Q3. A real shame for him to be dropped down to P15. Still, though, a strong result potentially on for him on those medium tyres if he can catch up to his teammate Lance. Guan Yu Zhou is then in P16 in his Alfa Romeo. He'll struggle to stay there with the likes of Verstappen and Ricciardo behind. He starts on the durable medium tyres. Verstappen down to P17, a disaster for him. He starts on the softs. He'll need to cut through the field and get towards his teammate for some strong points here today. He then starts in front of the Aston Martin of Matsushita. Bit of a shame for him. Once again dropped down towards the rear of the field due to grid penalties. He starts on the mediums, while behind him on the pacier softs is Daniel Ricciardo. He's got quite a lot of recovery work to do in his McLaren this weekend. He'll have to cut through the field like Max Verstappen will, who starts just a couple of places in front. Latifi then starts on the durable medium tyres. Question is, can he defend from the two houses behind? Mazepin in front of Schumacher. They're both on the soft compound tyres to start. We are starting the race on the medium tyres. We are then likely to go for a one-stop strategy onto the hards or onto the softs if we're fine with tyre wear until the end of the Grand Prix. If we have to, we may potentially go for the medium soft strategy. That's only really if it's going to be quicker. And here we go then in Mexico, the party atmosphere, 5 red lights. And they are out for the penultimate round of the season. Sergio Perez alongside on his soft tyres, getting a much better start than ourselves. And he's gliding through into P1, thankfully. No real challenging from further back from Russell and Hamilton. We're getting the slipstream from Checo as we're then going to try and go around the outside line into turn 1, side by side, inside line for turn 2. And we get the move done. We are in front of Sergio Perez. And the battle for P3, it's Russell versus Hamilton. Russell started P3. He's trying to defend that from Lewis, but Lewis going round the outside line, it will be. He'll then have the inside line. He managed to stick it out around the outside line. Now the inside line for the Mercedes, and he managed to dispatch the Ferrari with Russell, who is now in P4 in front of his teammate Carlos Sainz. Bottas is then up to P6, and a fantastic start for Fernando Alonso up into P7. Lando Norris just behind him in P8. Our teammate Charles Leclerc remains in P9 off the start. He's in front of Stroll, who's dropped down to P10. Just in front of the Alpine, and a strong start for Esteban Ocon, and he's chasing and chasing. No DRS available until lap number 3, but Ocon is going to go around the outside line here. A fantastic move on his softs. Meanwhile, further back it's Zhou and Verstappen coming through into P15. So it is Esteban Ocon in front of the 2 AlphaTauris of Lance Stroll, and a strong start for Pierre Gasly up to P12. Antonio Giovinazzi in the Williams is then in P13. He's in front of Robert Schwartzman and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, who's made some okay progress off the start. And he is chasing now down into turn 1. The power of that Honda versus Schwartzman in the Mercedes-powered Aston Martin. It's going to be round the outside line into turn 1 for Max Verstappen. He'll have to do the work, because his engine's not sending him past Schwartzman, but he does manage to get the move done. And then further back, Ricciardo versus Guan Yu Zhou. It's side by side between the two. The Alfa Romeo versus the McLaren. And now look at this. Nobuharu Matsushita looking to get into the mix. The duo of Ricciardo and Zhou holding each other up. And look at this. Matsushita down the inside line into the next corner. It's 3 wide. And Daniel Ricciardo up to P16. He's in front of Matsushita. Then it's the 2 Alfa Romeos of Zhou, Tsunoda, the Haas's of Schumacher and Mazepin, and then the Latifi who rounds out the field. What a fantastic start to this Grand Prix, and we're getting more action. It's the other Williams of Giovinazzi, who is just only able to watch Max Verstappen speed past him. Fantastic move there from Max, and Daniel Ricciardo is into the pits. He must have got front wing damage from his fight with Yuki Tsunoda and Nobuharu Matsushita. Disaster for him. I don't see any front wing damage, but clearly he wants a fresh front wing, and it's soft tyres on, so he's not going to go for a risky one-stop strategy. Meanwhile, Hamilton and Russell are tussling once again. Russell wants that P3 back, and he will have the inside line for the next corner. Fantastic place to get moves done, proving so in this Grand Prix. pushes Hamilton a bit onto the runoff and onto the curb, gets the move done. Meanwhile, it's side by side for both of the Alfa Romeos and both of the Haasers, and Tsunoda comes through in front of his teammate Wang Yuzhou, who's down to P18, and then it's Nikita Mazepin in front of Mick Schumacher. Meanwhile, on lap number 4, Perez is flying at us in that Red Bull, and he steams past into turn 1. Nothing we can do there. I did lift off, and I think we may potentially have to go side by side with him. Nearly contact on his rear. Thankfully, our front wing doesn't touch him, and it is still intact. We haven't got DRS though, so a tactical mistake for ourselves, and we drop down to P2. Meanwhile, Red Bulls have their other driver, Max Verstappen, further down the order, and he's fighting with a sister car of the AlphaTauri in the hands of Pierre Gasly, and it's going to be Verstappen down the inside line of Pierre Gasly, and a fantastic move there for the Dutchman up into P12, splitting the two white and black AlphaTauris, and that's not going to last for that much longer because he's going to go past Lance Stroll using the DRS there. Fantastic move from Max up into P11, and now on the edge of the points. Daniel Ricciardo hasn't had similar fortunes in this Grand Prix though after his front wing change. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez getting very close to us there, shoving us onto the runoff. Nearly some contact. We're forced to back off. And on lap number 6, we are going to remain in P2, and a poor exit off turn 3 means that we're only going to be able to stick in this position for a little bit longer. Hopefully we can attack Perez fairly soon. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso is under fire from the McLaren of Lando Norris. Alonso dropping further away from Valtteri Bottas, and look at this from Lando. He's going to go around the outside line into turn 1, getting that move done. He'll want to chase back onto Valtteri Bottas, who's in front in his Mercedes. Meanwhile, onto lap number 7 we got, well, onto lap number 8 now, end of lap number 7, onto 8, and we are chasing down the Red Bull in front. The Mexican of Sergio Perez, the home favourite, will be under fire. Meanwhile, Wang Yuzhou spins, a huge spin for Wang Yuzhou. Thankfully doesn't go into the wall, nearly takes out the two Haasers. Meanwhile, we are up into P1. Absolute drama. He'll have to wait for Ricciardo to come through, and now onto lap number 8 into turn 1. It's the two Haasers. Schumacher in front of Nikita Mazepin, and now the two AlphaTauris are at it. Pierre Gasly versus Lance Stroll. Civil war between these two. Fantastic battling, and that's Pierre Gasly going through into P12. Meanwhile, we now lead the Grand Prix. My teammate Charles Leclerc looking to dispatch the Alpine of Fernando Alonso. Maybe the soft tyres going off on Alonso's car, and my teammate Charles Leclerc taking advantage of that down the inside line into turn 1. Nearly some contact there, but Charles comfortably through. Meanwhile, further back, Max Verstappen is into the points. He's just managed to get past Esteban Ocon. And whoa! Nicholas Latifi trying to come through past Mazepin, and it nearly loses the car. The rear end all over the place. Don't know how it happened, but a fantastic save from the Canadian. On to lap number 10. My teammate Charles Leclerc now down the inside line of Lando Norris into turn 1, but they're going to be side by side because Norris actually takes the inside line. My teammate Charles Leclerc with the inside line, but Norris back with the inside line, and he comes back through into P7. But now, of course, the next straight to contend with my teammate Charles Leclerc with DRS, and he steams through. Nonetheless, some fantastic top-class defending from Lando Norris to keep him at bay through the first 3 corners. Meanwhile, we lead the Grand Prix from Sergio Perez, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and then Valtteri Bottas. Then it's a little bit back towards my teammate Charles Leclerc. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz is in lap number 10, off those soft tyres for him. Of course, he will have used them. He won't have used them in Q2, actually, of course. It was wet in Q2. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen will join him, potentially using those tyres to try and punch his way through the field. Carlos Sainz committing to the two-stop strategy. It will be soft, and then likely mediums for him. Esteban Ocon comes through into P9. Where is Carlos Sainz going to be? Will he be out in front of the AlphaTauris? Yes, he will. Sainz out into clean air in P10. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen, after overtaking both AlphaTauris, he might have to do that again later in this Grand Prix as they're steaming through, and Verstappen is out way behind them, down there in P16. Matsushita, I do believe it, is in front of him. Sergio Perez currently sits in P2 then. His teammate Max Verstappen came in last time round. Will we see the Mexican into the pits this time? Yes, we will. Sergio in for his first servicing of the Grand Prix is going to be joined by George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. So the two-stop strategy proving a common strategy in this Grand Prix. Softs to softs for Checo, same at Ferrari for George. Those softs certainly complementing his car with the scarlet red. And Perez is out in front of George Russell, who's just out in front of Lewis Hamilton. A great pit stop at Mercedes to close Hamilton in on Russell. And Perez is going to be out. in front of any traffic. Same for George Russell, but no, Carlos Sainz charging down the main straight, and he's through. He's got the undercut, but now Russell with DRS on the pit exit will go down the inside line. And a fantastic move from Russell, and it's Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton followed by Gasly, Stroll, Schwartzman, Giovinazzi and Norris down there in P13. Meanwhile, further in front, Carlos Sainz was about to get past his teammate George Russell, and now he's under fire from the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, who's trying to come through, and Hamilton's going to go around the outside line. That means they'll have the inside line for the next corner, and Hamilton gets the move done. It could have been 2 positions gained under the pit stops of Carlos Sainz, and it is none. As a result, meanwhile, Lando Norris comes through past the Williams of Antonio Giovinazzi. He'll look to chase onto the back of Robert Schwartzman, who currently sits in P11. Verstappen a bit further down the field in P15. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas did not pit last lap. One of the only really big drivers on the soft tyres in this Grand Prix, near the front not to pit on lap number 11 or lap number 12. Anyway, he is in. Esteban Ocon will join him from P4. Will Valtteri be out behind this back? It's quite likely here. Of course, staying out for longer will prove quite costly. Perez comes through, Russell, Hamilton and Sainz, which means that Bottas will slot into P7. Gasly now charging down the main straight, then Lance Stroll. Robert Schwartzman is going to be fighting with Lando Norris into turn 1. Norris using that DRS, similarly so for Schwartzman with more power for the McLaren. And Norris is going to potentially have to contest this into the first corner. He pretty much gets the move done. Schwartzman tries to fight back, but Norris is up into P10, and now he's on an absolute rampage. He's looking to go around the outside line of Lance Stroll, and a great move. Meanwhile, further back, 3 wide, Fernando Alonso down the inside line, round the outside line for Max Verstappen into P11, and Schwartzman was in front of Fernando Alonso, but not for much longer, as now down the main straight onto lap 14. It's going to be side by side between the two, and it looks like Alonso is going to be able to come through. Schwartzman, though, with a last-ditch dive bomb, and he's hit Alonso, and he's spun. Schwartzman is round, and that will drop him down the order. It was a great drive from him so far in this Grand Prix, but maybe a little bit too aggressive with Alonso. He hits him. There's contact. Hopefully no damage, but he is round. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is chasing onto the back of the AlphaTauri, and it's Lance Stroll down the inside line for Max Verstappen, usually round the outside line. Either way, he gets the move done, shoving Lance Stroll out onto the outside curb there, and he's back up into the top 10. Lance Stroll, meanwhile, is going to be one of the first on the medium tyres to come in for what will be, I'm guessing in this Grand Prix, a 2-stop for him too. Giovinazzi and Matsushita will join him at this stage. Stroll into the pit box, and it's a soft tyres on, replacing those mediums, so a 2-stop strategy for him, no hards. Similarly so at the Aston Martin garage for the Japanese driver, Daniel Ricciardo, safely out of his McLaren pit stop. He's on his second stop of the Grand Prix at this stage after the front wing replacement. So Giovinazzi out in P16 in front of Matsushita, Daniel Ricciardo, and it will be Yuki Tsunoda behind Zhou and Schumacher. Those two incredibly close to the head down to turn 1. Schumacher managing to get past the Alfa Romeo. Meanwhile, Nikita Mazepin will be out just in front of Yuki Tsunoda. Pierre Gasly now under fire from the sister car of the Red Bull. Max Verstappen with so much more pace in his soft tyres than the worn mediums, and he flies through the odd. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc is in already, and it will be the 2-stop strategy. The 1 stop is the plan for ourselves, mediums to soft, so Charles struggling more with tyre wear. He'll be out there likely in P7. He is out there in P7, so he's got to catch on to that pack in front. Then, of course, Norris, Verstappen, Alonso, and Pierre Gasly is into the pits. His teammate came in last time round. Robert Schwartzman currently in P13 on lap number 15. Will we see him in? Yes, we will. So, Pierre Gasly, a nice pit stop there at the AlphaTauri garage. Great work from the crew. And now for Aston Martin, Schwartzman, after his spin, thankfully, does not have any damage to his front wing, but he has got a fresh set of soft tyres. And now Stroll is out in front of Pierre Gasly at AlphaTauri. Gasly will be looking to come back through, and then Ricciardo is going to be out in front of Schwartzman. So is Mick Schumacher. What about Nicholas Latifi? Robert Schwartzman will be out certainly in front of Nicholas Latifi as he's exiting the pits, and then the Haas of Nikita Mazepin comes through. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda overtakes him. Some fantastic battling here in the Mexican Grand Prix, and we're going to see more of it because Lewis Hamilton is chasing onto the back of George Russell, who sits in P3. It will be the Mercedes round the outside line comfortably into turn 1. Nothing Russell can do there to protest that. So much more pace for the Mercedes. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc is in P7, but not for much longer. He's going to go round the outside line of the other Mercedes of Bottas, and he's going to get the move done there. So 1 Mercedes upper pace That's Hamilton. And 1 Mercedes down a place. That's Valtteri Bottas down to P7. And now side by side between Robert Schwartzman and Mick Schumacher. Schwartzman easily comes through. Meanwhile, the two AlphaTauris are fighting more civil war there. These two have been providing insane battling through the whole of this Grand Prix. And Gasly is through into P12. Great move from him and some more top-class AlphaTauri civil war. Meanwhile, teammate Charles Leclerc is on an absolute charge on those soft tyres, and he's in front of Carlos Sainz in his Ferrari, who absolutely threw his car over the curb there, I must say. And my teammate Charles Leclerc will have some DRS onto the back of the other Ferrari of George Russell, and surely not. He looks like he's going to get both of them in a third of a lap. And Charles Leclerc is going to go around the outside line into Sector 2. He'll have the inside line. Simply fantastic. An overtaking masterclass. And he's up into P4. Great work there from him. And now onto lap number 20. He's going to try and get past the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. And he does that comfortably down the straight. Some insane power in our Ferrari unit. And he glides past Hamilton quite literally into turn 1. And now Carlos Sainz is into the pits this time round. Of course, the first of those on the two-stopper to come in for their final stop. What tyres will it be? It should surely be those lovely medium tyres, the yellow mark medium. But it's a hard tyre. It's another strategy mistake for Ferrari and Carlos Sainz. And that could prove costly. Will it be costly too for Max Verstappen? Yes, it will. Hard tyres, you don't need them on to go until lap 36 in this Grand Prix. So Carlos Sainz exits in P9, but on the hard tyres, Ocon will be out in front of Max Verstappen. Will Pierre Gasly? No, he shall not. Quite a way back, and Verstappen is out in P11 on the edge of the points, and I'm sure Ocon and Alonso still have to pit. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc versus Sergio Perez. This is for P2, and my teammate is gliding through, making easy work these last few laps of these other cars. And then in front, in front, it's ourselves, then behind Perez, Hamilton, Bottas, and George Russell, who is in. A nice pit stop there at Ferrari. Norris will come through. Fernando Alonso continues along. Will he be out in front or behind my team, or behind George Russell, who has replaced my teammate's seat from last season? Carlos Sainz's teammate is behind him. Of course, Sainz on the hard tyres. You can't really undercut someone who's on worn softs when you've gone onto hard tyres. Sergio Perez currently in this lap in P3. He will be joined by Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas, of course, will stay out. He did that with the first pit stops and stayed out a lap later than most of the other drivers on the same strategy. And Perez is out of his pit box on the medium. Same for Lewis Hamilton, who's a little bit further behind Perez, driving a fantastic Grand Prix here. Meanwhile, Lando Norris in P6 is also in. So Sergio Perez will be out in P4 pretty comfortably. Lando Norris fitted with some fresh medium tyres. George Russell, though, is heading down the main straight. Hamilton versus Russell into turn 1, and Hamilton will be out comfortably in front. It's then Carlos Sainz in front of Lando Norris. Alonso being fitted at the moment with some fresh tyres, and Ocon actually out in front of Norris. However, he will probably be in next time. And now under threat from Max Verstappen is Lando Norris into turn 1, and Verstappen up into P9. He's got the move done under the pit stops. Great work there from him. And Fernando Alonso is out behind both of the AlphaTauris. They still have another pit stop, though, left in this Grand Prix. Bottas has been fitted with some fresh tyres as the Haas team are putting out their pit board out of their pit wall area. Hamilton continuing along. He will be out comfortably in front of his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Hasn't quite had the pace this weekend. He will be out, though, in front of Carlos Sainz. That looks very close, but he will be out in front of the Spaniard. Esteban Ocon into his pit box. The Alpine garage fitting him with some fresh medium tyres too. Where is he going to filter out, of course, behind Pierre Gasly and Lance Stroll. Alonso chasing onto the back of Lance Stroll. That could get tasty fairly soon. Into turn 1. That DRS proving very powerful on the main straight, but nothing comes of it. Then it's Matsushita, Giovinazzi and Esteban Ocon. But now on to lap number 25. Alonso does not want to be stuck behind Lance Stroll for any longer, and he glides through. Next up for him, it'll be the other AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly, who currently sits in P10. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll now is into the pits after being a bit of a pest for Fernando Alonso in his Alpine. Lance has decided to come in and dispose of those tyres. Esteban Ocon, of course, continuing along. He's already had his final pit stop. Lance Stroll will be putting on another set of soft tyres till the end. Some pacey softs for him and Matsushita. Same strategy for those two. And Giovinazzi being fitted with some fresh soft tyres at Williams too. So Schwartzman is going to be P14, then it'll be Lance Stroll in P15, followed by Latifi, then Matsushita, and Giovinazzi chasing onto the back of him. That could certainly get spicy fairly soon. Meanwhile, for ourselves, lap number 27, we are going to come into the pits this time round. We really need to get rid of these medium tyres, 55% on the front left, and we're losing a lot of time to my teammate Charles Leclerc per lap at the moment. Behind us is the McLaren of Ricciardo, who we have just lapped. Didn't expect to say that, but it's been a pretty disastrous Grand Prix for him, and I doubt he'll get any points. But it will be soft tyres till the end for ourselves. We've managed to extend the medium stint, and my teammate is in 2. It will be a double stack. It won't be any issues for him, of course, plenty of a gap between the two of us, but the soft tyres for ourselves until the end of the Grand Prix, and now my teammate enters his pit box. So 2.5 seconds, a bit of a slower stop for ourselves. Nonetheless, we will be out comfortably in front of Charles, and now it's going to be ourselves just keeping that gap over Charles until the end of the Grand Prix. How far back is he going to be as it exits the pits now? 7.9 seconds, so we need to just keep that gap at about 7 seconds until the end of the Grand Prix, 7-8 seconds, and hopefully maybe even try to set the fastest lap and win the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Nicholas Latifi is chasing down the house of Mick Schumacher. Some fantastic pace in the second half of this Grand Prix for Latifi, and he's down the inside line of the Haas. A fantastic move there from the Canadian. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc is currently in P2 behind ourselves, and he's slowly starting to chase onto us, I would say a bit, but not really quick enough in this Grand Prix, and he seems to be slowing. It's a mechanical failure! His engine's blown up on us! Oh, what a disaster for him. What a disaster for the team. But that's pivotal for ourselves in the championship. Perez will be up into P2. Hamilton will be up into P3. Russell will take P4. Bottas will take P5. Carlos Sainz will take P6. Verstappen will take P7. Norris will take P8. Alonso will take P9. And Ocon will be taking a solitary point. But absolute disaster for my teammate. Redemption, kind of, after Imola when we had a mechanical failure from P2. But this is perfect for ourselves and a disaster for my teammate. Meanwhile, Latifi is gliding past Yuki Tsunoda. A great move there from him as he continues to make progress up the bottom of the field. And as you can see, we are P1 by 21 seconds now. For my teammate, it's a disaster, because if it stays like this, we will lead the championship by 6 points. Hopefully, we can get the fastest lap to make that a 7-point lead into the final race of the season, which is, of course, Jeddah. Over the line we head, and we're just missing out on the fastest lap. It's 1 minute 14.5, but not good enough there for ourselves. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly is pressurising Daniel Ricciardo, and on those lovely fresh soft tyres for the Alpine, the Alpha Tauri, he can now chase onto the Alpines, although the Alpine is looking still a quicker car, and we are officially lapping Daniel Ricciardo once again. But this is after everyone's final pit stops in this Grand Prix. It's been a pretty dismal weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. Knocked out in Q2 and then dropped further down the field due to grid penalties, and then even worse in the race after an incident on lap number 2 where he broke his front wing and was forced to pit for a fresh one. Meanwhile, we aren't quicker that lap. A bit disappointing. We want to get that extra point. That could be pivotal, and that could simply decide the championship at the end of the season. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen is chasing onto the back of Carlos Sainz, the Ferrari versus the Red Bull. Of course, Carlos opted for the hards, Verstappen opted for the hards, same tyres here, very different cars, and a great move from Max up into P6. What a recovery this has been from him in this Grand Prix. Meanwhile, we are on lap 35, on to 36. It has been a simply fantastic Grand Prix across the field. So many overtakes. Absolutely incredible. I wasn't expecting a Grand Prix this dramatic. Of course, Mexico 3 DRS zones, fantastic for overtaking. What a Grand Prix it has been. Meanwhile, for ourselves, we are going to try for the fastest lap this time, and we want that extra point off the exit of turn 3. Huge double oversteer. Thank God we held that. We could have been in the wall. That's our chance of any great lap time gone. That's 5/10 slower in sector 1 and a big lock up there, but this is pretty much almost the perfect Grand Prix for ourselves. I mean, an extra point for the fastest lap would have been even better. But this will put ourselves 6 points in front into the final race of the season, and it really is kind of redemption. We had a mechanical failure in Imola from P2. My teammate has had a mechanical failure here from P2. So all square with mechanical failures, and it will all go down to the wire. We will have a 6-point lead into Jeddah, and it will be all to play for. And now into the stadium section. You can start to hear the atmosphere, and the fireworks are going here, the confetti, fantastic to watch, as we are going to win our 3rd Mexican Grand Prix and put ourselves into the lead of the championship.
That race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way out onto the podium.
An absolutely pivotal race this weekend for ourselves here, taking 25 points while my teammate failed to score due to a mechanical failure. A bit of a shame we couldn't take the fastest lap there. That would have been an extra point, but still, we move into the championship lead, 6 points ahead of my teammate Charles Leclerc, with it all to play for into Jeddah. And of course, we do take the championship lead for the first time since the season opener at Bahrain, when we managed to win there. And once again, Sergio Perez is P2 at his home Grand Prix, but a fantastic drive out there in that Red Bull. 18 points in the end, and a whole 18 seconds in front of the Mercedes of Hamilton, who finished in P3. Really fantastic pace out there today from the Mexican, spurred on by his home crowd. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton is P3. A great battle with his fellow countryman George Russell for the podium, and Hamilton came out on top with 15 points as a result, a pivotal result for him in the driver standings, but also Mercedes in the constructors. While George Russell at Ferrari finishes P4, great battle with Hamilton, of course. Lewis did manage to come out on top for the podium, but still another strong result for George, and 12 points once again in his debut season. Valtteri Bottas is then in P5 in the Mercedes, making it a bit of a Mercedes-Ferrari sandwich there. Bottas, of course, taking 10 points, and he had similar pace to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Of course, Bottas started P7 in the Grand Prix. Verstappen, though, P6 with a fantastic recovery, just 11 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes, and an incredible drive from P17, an overtaking masterclass, and a well-deserved 8 points. Meanwhile, Lando Norris struggled for pace in his McLaren, not the quickest of cars this weekend, but a strong 6 points for his troubles, finishing in front of the Spaniard of Carlos Sainz in his Ferrari, and once again, another strategy mistake from Ferrari. That proves costly for the Spaniard. 4 points in the end. Those hard tyres simply did not work on his car, and that proved quite costly for him at the end of the Grand Prix. His fellow countryman Fernando Alonso was then P9 in the Alpine in front of his teammate Esteban Ocon, who is P10. Those two with strong results out there today, and another great result for Fernando Alonso. 2 points out there for him. The Alpine, a very pacey midfield car, and both of them really managed to show that out there today. Esteban Ocon was P10, the first of those to be lapped, only 9 cars not being lapped in this Grand Prix. That shows how spread out the pack became, but still a solid point from Esteban out there today, and a well-deserved one with another great drive. Pierre Gasly was P11 in the end in his AlphaTauri, just behind Esteban Ocon, so a great drive for the AlphaTauri driver, once again performing well from P15 out there today. Daniel Ricciardo recovered to P12, bit disappointing for him, but of course it has been a weekend to forget, and that front wing damage and then the pit stop concluding that proved incredibly costly. While Haru Matsushita was P13, a strong result. He avoided any shenanigans and took a decent position out there for him today, in front of a Giovinazzi, who only dropped to P14 from P12 on the grid in his Williams. A great drive out there today, and a solid one from the Italian, while Robert Schwartzman was P15. Great pace, better pace than his teammate in the Grand Prix, but after he got a bit too aggressive in the battle with Alonso, he ended up spinning and ultimately paid the price, finishing P15 in the Grand Prix. He was then followed by Latifi, who was P16 in his Williams. A strong result from P20, and found some fantastic pace towards the end of the Grand Prix in his Williams, certainly gaining confidence in that car in Season 3, while he then finished in front of the Alfa Romeo of Yuki Tsunoda. Solid drive to finish P17, although he did start P13. Not the best of cars to be in is that Alfa Romeo. Second worst car on the grid, so I'm sure I'll be happy with P17 in front of Schumacher. A very strong drive to be P18 there in his house from 22nd on the grid. And again, another just solid performance from Mick in front of Guan Yu Zhou, who was set for a decent result, potentially P18 for him, but of course that spin, that rookie mistake, proved very costly out there today. Well, Nikita Mazepin was the only man to be lapped and was the last of the finishers once again. Apparently Lance Stroll had a mechanical failure, similarly so for my teammate Charles Leclerc, who failed to finish. In terms of the driver standings then, we are in the lead, 174 points as we move into P1. My teammate Charles Leclerc in P2 with 168, 6 points behind, all to play for into Jeddah. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen remains in P3, 128 points for him, comfortably in front of his teammate Sergio Perez, who has 88 behind there in P4. The Ferrari of George Russell remains in P5, 63 points for him, only 2 though, in front of a charging Lewis Hamilton, who's up to P6 with 61. His teammate Valtteri Bottas drops down to P7. He has 57 points, comfortable 7 in front of Lando Norris, who is in 8th, and his McLaren on 50. 10 points behind him, Carlos Sainz sits in 9th on 40 points, while Daniel Ricciardo rounds out the top 10 with 32. Then, following him, you've got the two AlphaTauris. Pierre Gasly has 27 points, while Lance Stroll has 10. The Alpine of Fernando Alonso now has 9 after his couple of points today. 3 in front of the Aston Martin of Nobuharu Matsushita, who's in 14th with his points tally at the moment. Ocon has then got 3 points, while Robert Schwartzman has 1 point. In terms of the Constructors, we have already comfortably won the Constructors' Championship. We have 342 points comfortably in front of Red Bull, who have 216. They've cemented their P2. Mercedes move further in front in P3. They have 118 points, while Ferrari virtually out the equation with 103 in 4th. McLaren are pretty much out of it now in the battle for P3, down there in 5th with 82, while AlphaTauri are comfortable in 6th with 37, Alpine have 12, and Aston Martin drop further away with 7, 5 points behind the blue Alpine car. What a Grand Prix. It has been a pivotal one for the championship as we win while my teammate fails to finish due to a mechanical failure. If you guys have enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. But thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you all sometime soon when we move on to the season finale in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah.